Would you breathe with me, please? Taking a deep breath. And again. And one more time, please. I had the community in Edmonton do that last week as well. So we're starting a trend here because I was at the Edmonton Canadian New Thought Conference and spoke at their Sunday morning service. Hold on one second. I'm going to turn my fan on. Ames, is that going to... Okay. Thanks. That's not going to mess up your guitar. Okay, good. Okay. Anyway, the Canadian New Thought Conference in Edmonton, and I was one of their Sunday morning speakers. And so we breathed together. As you all were breathing together about 10:30 last week, we were breathing together as well in Edmonton. So in case you are shocked by my talk title today, and I didn't spell it out, but I'm going to say it. Screw it, just do it. Okay, so I want to remind you that my nickname for my entire career in ministry has been Reverend Naughty. It's just true. It's just true. Not necessarily because I do naughty things, but because I've been known to push the envelope occasionally, right? In other words, this is not your grandparents' spiritual center. It's really, really important to me to, number one, keep things light, to make it interesting, to make it occasionally provocative like a talk title like this, and most importantly, to be relevant. I'm not going to just preach at you about theory. I want to give us things that we can actually use that makes it relevant. So at this conference that I was at last week, and Val, it was attributed to you, they were introducing the members of the committee who were part of the putting the conference together, and they talked about Reverend Val Benedict, whose life philosophy is screw it, just do it. And I thought to myself, that would make a great talk title. It's catchy, it's funny, it's attention-getting, but do I dare? Do I dare? And then in our Roots class this week, we're studying Emerson's essay on self-reliance. And it's all about being who you are and expressing yourself and not worrying about what other people think and what other people's opinions are. And I knew that it was the right time to step up and say in a talk title, screw it, just do it. Thank you. So if you have a problem with this phrase, take it up with Mr. Emerson, who interestingly wrote, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." So often in our society, we hold ourselves back from being fully who we are because of fear. Fear of what other people will think, fear of looking foolish, fear of making a mistake, fear of failure. Some of us even have fear of success. And so what happens is that we tend to play our lives smaller than we could, which is pretty much the point of this talk. In other words, our teaching is all about expressing who we are, to go beyond our belief system, to go beyond our boundaries, to push the envelope, to live boldly. In other words, we are here to grow and to experience life and allow the divine to express through us and as us. Here's how our founder, Ernest Holmes, put it. There is an irresistible, universal, and divine urge within us to be happy, to be whole, and to express the fullness of life. The latent divinity within us stirs our imagination, and because of its insistent demand, impels and compels our growth. That insistent demand that impels and compels our growth, to be and express the fullness of life. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to make a spectacle of yourself while you are expressing. Although if that's your thing, go for it. It's obviously my thing. It just means that we are allowing ourselves to try something that calls to us without worrying about what other people might think or how you might look. Because if something is, as Ernest Holmes calls it, if something is tapping at the walls of your heart, if something is calling to you, if something is saying to you, screw this, do that, or screw it, what is it? Screw it, just do it. Oh my God. If that thing is calling to you. For example, many years ago, I was new to this teaching. I've been in the teaching a little over 30 years, so maybe not quite that long, but pretty new to the teaching. My family and I took a trip to Lake Tahoe. We are a rare family, even as adults, that we actually enjoy taking vacations together. So everyone was there. My parents, my brother and his family, my sister-in-law's twin sister and her family, my two sisters, their kids, and me. Talk about risk-taking. You got to all these different family units, right? In one house for a week. So my brother decides one day that he's going to rent a power boat, and we're going to cruise around the lake, right? Now, as a rule, we are not boat people. So in itself, that was kind of scary. It was kind of risky, right? So we kind of take turns who's going to go. And then I was in this particular group, and we motored. How many of you have been to Lake Tahoe? It's almost as beautiful as our mountains. It's really quite spectacular. So we motored over to this place called Emerald Bay. Iconic photos of Lake Tahoe, Emerald Bay. It's this gorgeous little inlet, and it's got emerald green waters and pine trees, and there's an island in the middle, and there's like a house that the rich people would take their boats over and live in and stuff. It's very cool. Very cool. So we're motoring around. You have to go really slow, kind of around the island. We're motoring around, and my brother says to his wife jokingly, "Do you want to dive in?" Now, she's a pretty athletic person, so she likes to challenge herself. So it wasn't that unreasonable a question. But you have to understand that Lake Tahoe is completely glacier-fed, and it is extremely deep. So it is extremely cold. Most people don't swim in Lake Tahoe unless it's right along the shore where it's warmer. So, of course, she said no, as most reasonable people would do. But there was a voice inside of me that said, "Pat, do it." And I'm like, what the hell, voice inside my head? Shut up. You see, at that point, I'd never been much of a physical risk taker. I've always been plump. I've always been afraid of looking foolish, believe it or not. And I definitely am afraid of physical discomfort and pain. But I'd been studying for a little while. I'd been studying this stuff called the science of mind. And I've been learning. Like, I do things that I didn't think I could. And I learned that stretching myself was actually good for me. And that the universe, when I allowed it to, was expressing through me and as me. So even though I was relatively new to all this, I didn't completely believe it yet. I was open to the possibility. So when that dang voice inside of me said, "Pat, do it," I didn't dismiss it immediately. And then it got bolder. And it actually spoke out loud. "I'll do it. I'll dive in." I don't know who was more shocked, me or my family, right? And before I could change my mind, I went to the bow of the boat. I took a deep breath. I basically said, screw it, just do it, and I dived into Lake Tahoe. Okay, now we're done with that picture. I'm rooting through my pictures last night going, do I dare, do I dare? Screw it, just do it, okay. Now, I wish I could tell you that I enjoyed this, right? I wish I could tell you that I swam and I frolicked like a dolphin or a synchronized swimmer, but that would be a lie. It was unbelievably cold and unbelievably shocking to my system. I scrambled out of that water faster than you can even imagine. It would make your head spin, and I'm sure looked a little foolish doing it. But the fact remained, I did it. And it changed my life. Because this plump, often afraid, non-risk-taking woman listened to an inner call to be more and blasted through fears and old belief systems about herself. Dr. Holmes puts it this way: through spiritual discernment, we see that we have within us a power which is greater than anything we shall ever contact, a power that can overcome every obstacle in our experience and set us safe, satisfied, and at peace, healed and prosperous in a new light and a new life. And I gotta tell you that this is true. This is absolutely true, because since I did that, I have done a number of what might be considered scary or risky physical things. For instance, I've jumped out of an airplane. Honest to God, I have a movie about that, but you are not seeing that one. I rode on an ATV on a beach in Mazatlan, Mexico. I traveled to Australia and another time to New York City by myself. I've ridden a jet ski by myself. I took yoga teacher training. And I did this little thing called moving to a foreign country at 56 years old. Yeah. And each time, it came as a voice that said to me, do this, it'll be good for you. It will grow you. Now, I kept this slide up because I want to talk about this term, spiritual discernment. Holmes talks about spiritual discernment. It's really important for us to understand spiritual discernment when we're talking about this topic, because discernment means judgment, and not the bad kind. It also means discrimination, also not the bad kind. We are intelligent beings. We are living in an intelligent universe, and we are acting intelligently. So even when we are saying, screw it, just do it, we need to be discerning about what we're willing to do. Discerning, but not fearful. There's a difference. The best way that I can describe the difference is when we make a decision based on fear, it feels fearful. It feels icky. It feels as if we're not being supported. I'm not going to do that. I'm afraid. Because we're feeling unsupported, we yield to that fear and we don't do something that might be right in front of us and might be something that impels and compels us to move forward. But when we're being discerning, when we're making a decision, it means that we are assessing the decision from a place of faith, from a place of trust. Then, when we make a decision, even if the decision is to not do the thing that we're contemplating, We can know that there is an inner guidance and that we are basing it on faith rather than fear. Is this making sense? It backs up this beautiful quote by Edward Teller. When you come to the end of all the light you know, and it's time to step into the darkness of the unknown, faith is knowing that one of two things will happen. Either you will be given something solid to stand on, or you will be taught to fly. So that's what enables us to say, screw it, just do it, when we feel called to do something. And of course, this is not just about taking physical risks, although I knew that was a funny story, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. In fact, I think that more of us are willing to take physical risks than other kinds of risks, such as financial or professional or emotional risks. For instance, I am not a financial risk taker. Never have been, never will. I'm a single woman supporting myself, so I like to keep my money safe. So because of that, I don't make risky financial decisions at all. And as a result, my money is safe, but it isn't growing. It is safe, but it isn't growing. Professionally speaking, some people might think that it's being a minister is a bit of a risk. I mean, yeah, but in my case, not really. I wasn't exactly setting the world on fire in my other life. So stepping into something like this wasn't a risk at all. I mean, it's my job to stand up here and talk. This is not a big risk for me. Except for I have heard, I'll share this with you, somebody once described ministry as standing in front of the congregation naked and turning slowly around. Yeah. So even though being a minister was no risk to me at all, making the decision to begin studying 30 years ago was a huge risk. Huge risk. Because back then, my inner voice was not as encouraging as it is now. Voices like, what do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? You, a minister? What if they find out what you're really like? You have nothing to say and you have nothing to teach. And yet something overrode those negative, those lower vibration thoughts. And I thought, screw it. I'm just going to do it. What have I got to lose? And that might be the most important question to ask ourselves when we're faced with the decision to do something or not, whether it's emotional or financial or professional or whatever. What have I got to lose? What have I got to lose? If you ask yourself that with discernment, and the price is too high to pay, then you know your answer. I have too much to lose. This is not mine to do. And that's fine. But if, after assessing the risk, what you have to lose is no longer as valuable as what you have to gain, then there's your answer. If what you have to lose is no longer as valuable as what you have to gain, that's your answer. Because letting go of something to attain the greater is often what we need to propel ourselves forward. But the problem is when we hold on to something that no longer serves us, we don't realize that it's actually weighing us down. It's actually bringing us down. So letting go feels risky. But not letting go is ultimately more risky. Here's what John Kennedy had to say. There are risks and costs to action, but they are far less than the long-range risks of comfortable inaction. Sometimes we just have to say, screw it, just do it. And then hold on. So there's a lot to say about this topic. I got to tell you, Reverend Leslie and I are co-teaching this wonderful Roots class, and it's so wonderful. And she was taking them through an exercise on Tuesday night, and I wasn't doing the exercise, but I was kind of in a state of meditation, so I took a whole page of notes that came to me about the topic of screw it, just do it, and I didn't use a single one. So this topic will come up again. It'll probably be called Screw It Again. Or Screw It, Just Do It Again. Okay, yeah, that's even better. But there's one more thing that I want to say about this before we close. There are some people who are addicted to the status quo, and they never try anything new, and they consequently never grow. Or else they're forced into growth by something or someone pulling the rug out from underneath them, and they go through a growth without their permission, but oftentimes they're bitter. We know those people who won't grow until growth forces itself on them. But there are other people who have become addicted to the adrenaline of risking and facing the unknown. And before they've had a chance to even savor the moment, they're on to the next thing. You understand what I'm saying here? Yeah. I'm a believer in allowing things to settle in, to sink in. When I have a win, I sit on that win for a while. I rest on my laurels, baby. Because I like to let it steep. I like it to let it get all the way through me. I like to enjoy that feeling of accomplishment before I'm on to the next thing. So when we look to nature, as we often do, because nature is our greatest teacher, Reverend Marjorie's beautiful treatment about that, we see that once something in nature has produced or experienced growth, it takes the time to rest and rejuvenate, doesn't it? Ovid said this, in fact, take a rest. A field that has rested gives a bountiful crop. For example, when I jumped in the lake, I went home and took a nap. But it was significant. It was the deepest, most satisfying rest that I can ever remember. You know, one of those naps where it's just like you're fully in it, and then when you wake up, you are renewed and you're refreshed. That's what this one was. It was the most, and this was 30 years ago. I still remember it. It was one of those satisfying naps, and I woke up and I felt accomplished. I allowed it. I allowed myself to feel that. And then I went about my life, stronger, more awake, more aware, stretched, and grown. And I waited for the next nudge of spirit to grow, because I knew it was coming, and I also knew that when it did, I would say, screw it, just do it. I hope I haven't offended you. Thank you for being here today, and so it is.